the only person holding you back, Josh, is you. If you don't make an offer, if you don't underwrite it, if you don't write the LOI, if you don't understand the financials and go for it, there's nobody else saying, Josh, you can't do that deal. Nobody else is telling me, hey, like, that deal is too big for you. Matter of fact, the broker brought it to us. We were the first ones to see it because the broker believes in us that we're a big enough player to go take that deal down. So if I don't make the offer, if I don't go after it, it's only because of my own negative thinking. It's only my own negative self-talk, right?
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to another episode of Weiss Advice. I'm excited to be here with you. I'm Yonah Weiss, as always, of course, but we have a great guest. That's Josh Cantwell. And I'm just so excited to finally have you on the podcast. It's been quite a while. I know we had some reschedulings, and I'm so glad that you could finally make it. So welcome.
Hey, Yonah, thanks so much for having me on. It's, we were talking, man. It's been probably a year, 18 months since you were on my show. And holy cow, does time fly, man. So just so excited to be back with you and connect with you and just see what's been going on for the last 12 or 18 months for both of us.
I know, it's incredible. I love coming on these shows and doing all these podcasts because you never know. There's one person listening who their life may be totally changed by this conversation. And you never know. I mean, maybe there's hundreds or thousands or more people listening, but it's that one person that's going to tune in and be like, okay, wow, this resonates with me. I'm going to implement this. And that's really the key, right? Yeah. Not just listen, but take a lesson that we're going to talk about today and actually apply it to our lives and our business and make some changes that literally could shape the rest of the course of your life.
Yeah. And you and I get to just chit chat, be friends.
Exactly.
Like, carve out this half hour or so, which, you and I being busy entrepreneurs and kind of leaders in the industry may otherwise not make time for. So at the very least, you and I get to deepen our relationship, and I'm grateful for that. So yeah.
Likewise. Likewise, definitely one of the main reasons why I do this in the first place, as can be told from this. But little introduction, if you guys don't know who Josh is, he is the founder, CEO of Freeland Ventures, which is a real estate apartment, specifically syndication and investment company, a private equity company where they own and control over 3,000 units at this point. So it's pretty exciting. It's been, like you said, it's been a busy couple of years. Past year, he's also a strategic real estate coach. Go check out his podcast and a lot of opportunities to learn directly one-on-one from Josh as well. So much to learn, so much value. But I just want to jump right in over here because everyone has a story, and our story is kind of unique. And I don't want to, go into the weeds, but I know you've had some challenges. You've overcome challenges in your life, and to get to where you are today. I mean, maybe you want to share with us, one of those challenging events and kind of see where it's led you and some lessons you've learned from it.
Well, there's no bigger challenge, right, than a life-threatening challenge. So 2011, I was diagnosed with advanced pancreatic cancer.
Wow.
And for those people that don't know, pancreatic cancer is probably the most lethal and most deadly version of cancer there is. That the survival rate for pancreatic cancer is just about 8%. And actually, Yonah, next month in November, I'm not sure when you're going to release this, but in November of 2021 will be 10 years since the date of my surgery. And so my background and a lot of my success in real estate goes back to this challenge, goes to this event. I was diagnosed, my wife, we had 2 small kids. My wife was pregnant with our 3rd child. Just like most people, most men, you're out, you're working, you come home, you got small kids, you start to play with them, right? You start tossing them around, wrestling, having a good time. And I was laying on the floor with my little girls, and I kind of rolled over. I remember folding my hands. It happened just like this, folding my hands across my stomach, looking up at the ceiling fan. And I felt this giant lump on the left side of my stomach. And I thought, that's in a weird spot. Like, that can't be good. Like, that's just not a hernia or something like that. It just feels weird. So I'm like, hey, Lisa, come on over here. Check this out. Just kind of poking around. It's like as hard as a rock. I'm like, man, where did that come from? And it wasn't small, like it was big. So my buddy, who was an orthopedic surgeon, lived across the street. I went over to him. His name's Dr. Latul Farrow. And I said, hey, Latul, check this out. He's like, yeah, go get a CT scan. So like, listen, the issue with that was that my wife was already 8 months pregnant. So whatever was going on with me had to wait till my son was born. So my son was born, there's some complications there, but he had surgery right after he was born. When he was finally done with his surgery, he had a cyst in his neck. They had to take that out. When he was in the clear, I finally went and got to the doctor and got checked out. And sure enough, doctor walks in, CT scan, Yona, and says, hey, Mr. Cantwell, I'm sorry to tell you, but you have pancreatic cancer. And just, 35 years old, just floored. Like I was in good shape, man. Like I was working out. My family was young. My business was good. And sure enough, like your life changes, drop of a hat, using the cliche.
Right. Overnight. But, wow.
From there, the next 9 months are absolute chaos. I didn't work for 9 months. I was actually in the residential investing business at the time. We were flipping houses, doing a lot of wholesaling and some private lending. And for the next 9 months, I really couldn't work, preparing for the surgery, recovering from the surgery. And I realized at that point just how difficult it really was to scale residential, and also how difficult it was to make money if I wasn't going to work, if I wasn't putting my pants on and going to the job. Employees were great. We had a good business and definitely some systems, but you realize, man, when you chop the head of the snake off, the rest of the business was going to die. And it did. And we struggled. We were bleeding cash. We were hurting badly. And this is probably where Dylan and I learned my biggest lesson, which was to realize that although real estate in the residential space is sexy, it's exciting.
Yeah.
It's not what we learned in Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's not what we learned in Multiple Streams of Income by Robert Allen. It's not what we learned from the cash flow quadrant. Those books, those strategies are all about creating cash flow and forever passive incomes, equity. And we all love that. We all fall in love with that idea. But then so many of us investors get sucked into, well, I got to do deals with none of my own money, none of my own cash, none of my own credit. I'm going to start with residential. I'm going to start with wholesaling. And then they get stuck there forever.
Yeah.
And so pancreatic cancer ends up being the blessing and the curse of that time, that year, but ultimately the greatest blessing of my life as well.
Wow. I mean, that, like you said, there can't be a possibly bigger challenge to overcome than a life-threatening disease like you just described it. I mean, not to go into too many of the gory details, but it sounds like it was miraculous. I mean, if it's that you were able to actually overcome that.
It was a miracle from above, and it's like literally God's blessing. Introduced me through my oncologist, Dr. Ali, met my surgeon, Dr. Matthew Walsh, literally performed a miracle on the operating table. I was told by many other surgeons and doctors that most surgeons wouldn't have even tried that surgery. Not to get too into the gory detail, but let's get into the gory detail. So they took out, my stomach, no stomach, gallbladder, spleen, gone. Most of my liver, gone. Most of my pancreas, gone. They had to take out a lot of arteries out of my leg and put them into the back of my liver because they were crushed by the size of the cancer. The cancer mass was as big as a basketball.
Oh my goodness.
And I'll never forget, Yona. Now this is really the gory detail. But this is the fun stuff. This is why not talk about it, right? It's been 10 years. I'm here. I'm alive. I'm happy and healthy. I'll never forget coming out of the ICU about day 5 of my recovery, still in the hospital. I could barely, I was conscious, but not coming in and out of sleep all the time. And I looked down at the foot of my bed. Dr. Walsh was there. And he said, Josh, this has just been an amazing, amazing 5 days, what you've gone through, what you're going through and recovering. I still didn't understand. He looked up at me, Yona, and he said, look at my hands, Josh. See how black and blue they are? And I said, yeah. He said, Josh, they're black and blue because I had my hands inside your body, banging my hands against the clamps, right? To try to perform this surgery to ultimately save your life. And he did. And so one of the biggest lessons I've learned from this, Yona, ultimately is I had another doctor tell me that the only reason why that worked was because Dr. Walsh was daring. It was the exact word that the other physician used describing Dr. Walsh. He was daring. And I imagine that Dr. Walsh, becoming such an amazing world-class surgeon, he went above and beyond. He studied longer. He studied harder. When everybody else was out partying, he was working, he was studying, he was honing his craft, so that when he was presented with this huge challenge, that he could take the risk. He was ready to be daring. And so that's kind of the lesson I learned from it that I'd love to pass along, right, to you, Yona, and the rest of our audience is, in order to, when you're presented with $100 million apartment deal, or a $5 million apartment deal, or a $2 million deal, or $20 million opportunity, the only way to ultimately take that calculated risk, like what Dr. Walsh did with me, was to be prepared to study, to learn, to listen to podcasts like Yona's, to get on webinars, to go to events, to dig into underwriting, to review deals, so that when you're presented with a great opportunity, that you can jump in, take the risk, be daring, and execute on it.
Right.
And so although that health lesson was a major health lesson, it really became an amazing business lesson for me. When I heard the words be daring, I thought, man, look how small I'm playing in the residential space. Look how small I'm playing. And then I started from that surgery, started growing a private equity fund, getting into apartments. I started playing bigger because I thought, just as a way to kind of almost honor Dr. Walsh and the blessing that God gave me of survival, I've got to play bigger, right? That was a huge lesson that came away from that for me.
Wow. That's an incredible lesson. And you're absolutely right. Obviously, it takes a long time. Like you said, there's a lot needs to be learned, right? You have to go through some of the smaller steps. You have to take those smaller risks in order to be in the playing field, to take those big, to be daring, take those bigger jumps. But when the opportunity presents itself and you're ready, I mean, you have to make the jump, because otherwise you never do. You really never do. I see it time and time again, and myself included. I'm speaking to myself. There's a lot I can do beyond what my capabilities, are, but I'm kind of holding myself back. So I'm just talking to myself right now.
Had a $100 million deal come up in my market in Cleveland, right? Two of the largest apartment buildings downtown. $100 million. The whisper price is between 100 and 110. The whisper price. So I would have never looked at that deal in the past, but now I'm like, hey, if I don't look at it, like, the only person holding you back, Josh, is you. If you don't make an offer, if you don't underwrite it, if you don't write the LOI, if you don't understand the financials and go for it, there's nobody else saying, Josh, you can't do that deal. Nobody else is telling me, hey, like, that deal is too big for you. Matter of fact, the broker brought it to us. We were the first ones to see it because the broker believes in us that we're a big enough player to go take that deal down. So if I don't make the offer, if I don't go after it, it's only because of my own negative thinking. It's only my own negative self-talk, right? So we got to go for it, right? And again, the experience with cancer, it's almost funny, this $100 million deal coming up almost exactly 10 years from the day of my surgery. So I almost feel like I have to make an offer on it and do the best I can to buy it to, again, honor the second chance that I was given. But man, sometimes it's in the biggest challenges of our lives. I think you'd agree that you learn the most, you expand the most, you grow the most, if you're listening to the lesson. Right. Exactly. So many people would go through that same experience, and be like, oh, woe is me. Why me? Why am I going through this? Why has God picked me for this? Why is life throwing this challenge at me? Why is it, whatever you believe, the universe is giving me this experience. Man, it all is in the perspective and how you look at it. If you look at it and say, because it was my father, actually, that said to me during this time, he said, it's during the experience, he said, Josh, pay attention every day to what you're going to learn. You're going to learn things during this diagnosis that nobody else has the blessing of ever going through. He looked at it as a blessing, which was blowing my mind because I thought I was going to die. And then after it was over, then he said to me, my father said to me, he said, Josh, God spared you for a reason. And again, whatever you believe, the universe, whatever, spared me for a reason. He said, now in the second half of your life, your job is to figure out why and expand and live the life that this extra time you've been given. Yeah. Again, it wasn't about woe is me. Oh man. Again, I am people I talk to, they got wiped out by the crash of 2008, 9, 10, and they have never gotten back in the game. Right. Or they got wiped out by a crypto, thing, or they got wiped out by a Ponzi scheme that they got screwed on. There's so many different things that people could get, their knees chopped off, and they choose not to get back in the game. We've all gotten our knees chopped out at one point. I'm sure you have, Yona. I certainly have a couple times. But
Absolutely.
it's the guys that win is the guys that never give up, the guys that stay in the fight, the guys that go back in and learn something from it and then jump into the next deal. So that's ultimately what you learn from it, right? Yeah. It's not that we wanted to go through cancer or wanted to go through a challenge or wanted to get wiped out by a Ponzi scheme. Nobody wants that, but that's what the world gave you. So make it something positive.
Exactly. I couldn't say it better. I mean, that's such a powerful lesson. And you articulate it so well because we're all given challenges, like every single one of us, big or small, right? Oh, my Uber didn't come today or whatever, like I missed the bus, whatever you want to call it, the train. That's a blessing, right? And we have to see that. But now what do I do with that? And I think that's the important part that you just brought out is now what do I do with it? Right? How do I use the rest of my life or this time to make a difference? I mean, so are there practical things like that you are now like taking upon yourself to give back in a certain way? Like you realize, obviously you've been given a second chance, right? Like,
sure. I think there's a couple things that I do in my life that I think are very winning habits that I think to give back to your audience, I think would be help. And number one is I think I have this mindset that nobody is coming to my rescue. Okay. And that if I'm going to be an elite entrepreneur, I'm going to invest in apartments, I'm going to buy assets, I'm going to be a great dad, a good husband, I'm going to be a good coach. I love to coach volleyball and basketball with my kids. We're deep in the middle of volleyball season. My daughter just broke her finger yesterday. She's out for the season. I'm devastated. So is she, but I'm going to go coach her buddies, right? Because they have an amazing team. But I realized that even with that experience of my daughter's finger yesterday, she's probably our best player. She's got a bunch of really good players, but she's really talented. She broke her finger, right? So the other girls, you take all these 13-year-old girls, right? And you realize my message to them tonight at practice is literally going to be, look, nobody is coming to our rescue. Nobody was coming to my rescue when I had cancer. Nobody's coming to your rescue when you're underwriting an apartment deal. It's up to you. It's up to us to just figure it out. Okay. So you have to have 100% accountability for every decision that you make. And again, I think, Jocko's book, Extreme Ownership, is a great one that reinforces this, but you're 100% responsible for your own life and everything that happens in it. That's the very first thing. That's one of the biggest ways that I lead my life. Secondly, I think, look, in order to be, again, a successful entrepreneur and have balance, to have the income, the assets, the equity, but also the relationships, your faith, you're giving back in the form of maybe charitable things. You have to have super, super time management skills. Super. So I've subscribed, Yona, for 20 years. I learned this originally from Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coach, called it the individual management system. And this whole idea of free days, focus days, and buffer days, right? So somebody who's a super entrepreneur has super time management skills, and they have a team, maybe an executive assistant. We call them in my business an executive coordinator that helps coordinate the executive branch, the CEO of the business, right? Coordinate the schedule. What meetings are important? What are not important? What emails can we get rid of? What are the important projects to work on? So super time management skills. And so for me, free days are days where I do nothing in work. So it's baffling. Some people are like, Josh, you took the day off, we went golfing and didn't look at your phone. The answer is yes. I didn't answer a single text message. The answer is yes. Because here's why. On a free day when I'm not working, which is usually Saturdays and Sundays, but then I take days off during the week to go golf and spend time with friends. That's when I get my best ideas. When I'm not in the business, when I'm not looking at underwriting a deal, I'm not looking at another offering memorandum, I'm not raising capital, I'm not talking to my assistant or my team. That's when I get my best ideas. So if you want to be a great entrepreneur, you have to have time to think. Thinking has to come from not just working and hustling and I'm going to grind it out and work 80 hours a week. No, it's about thinking your way through strategy. And that's super important. The other thing, you and I think is, look, we use technology as a weapon in our business. So we tell our team, if it's not in the software, it didn't freaking happen. Okay. So if one of our property managers, and if it's not in Appfolio and I can't see it in the numbers, don't tell me about it if you can't show it to me in the software. We have big projects, like a big CapEx project. We put it in the software. We use Basecamp. If it pictures the bids, the videos, the projects, the signed scope of work, if it's not in Basecamp, it didn't happen. Okay. We tell our teams, like when we have a team meeting, if we're going to upload your presentations, the presentation is not done unless it's uploaded to the software. It didn't happen. So those are some of the things that are really important. And I think the last one, I think that, the other lesson or hack that's come from this is this one-to-many concept. I used to have meetings with private investors one-to-one. Now I subscribe to what I call the one-to-many concept, which is when I do a podcast like this one, Yona, you do it so you can have an impact on hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of people at a time. Right? So marketing is sales in print. That's how it used to be, right? When all the marketing was in print, it was in the newspaper. Today, marketing is sales in the digital space. Podcasts, email marketing, this whole one-to-many concept. So any of the subscribers that are looking to raise capital, again, be daring, go bigger, do things where you can have an audience that can hear hundreds or thousands of people hear your message at one time. That will allow you to get a lot more done without working 70, 80, 100 hours a week, right?
Absolutely.
So no one's coming to your rescue. Super time management skills, technology as a weapon. Look, and the one-to-many concept, these couple things are all things that have grown out of my experience with cancer and that I've applied to the apartment business that have absolutely helped me scale in a big way and have balance, significant balance, coaching my kids at multiple sports, spending time with my wife and my friends, going to my campsite, traveling. We still do it all, even though we have a big business.
That's awesome. It really is all about balance. And I think you touched on some incredible points here. I'm going to have to go back and listen to this a couple times because there's a lot to pull out from here.
Sure.
And I'd love to keep going, but I want to transition now to what we call the final four. So these are four questions I ask all my guests. And first question to you, Josh, is going to be, what is the worst job that you ever had?
Oh man, you had a great question. So super fast, absolutely hated it. It was a manufacturing company called High Level Screw Products. So when I was in college, I played college football, but in the summer and the winter between my sophomore and junior year, I took these little widgets that looked like dice and I took them out of this bin, shoved them in a machine. I took this little wrench and I had to polish this dice, take it out of the machine and put it in another basket for 8 hours a day.
Wow.
I think that's what made me an entrepreneur is I knew I could never go do that for 8 hours. I used to look up at the clock and play games with myself. Like, how many of these little widgets can I polish in 30 minutes? And I'm going to keep my head down because the clock was right above me. I'm going to keep my head down because the more I look at the clock, the slower the day went. It was brutal. So that was the worst job in the history of the earth.
That sounds like one of them, definitely. And there's still some guy out there doing that today, right?
Yeah, he probably makes a great living. There's so many guys making money good in the trades, right? That type of stuff. I don't want to talk down about it. It just was not for me.
It wasn't for you. Yeah. And I think entrepreneurs learn pretty early on, right? What skills and what things they don't want to be involved with, what type of activities they're more suited for. So I think that was an early lesson for you, which will lead us to another question in a minute or so. But next question is going to be, what's a book you've read that's given you a paradigm shift? And you already mentioned a few in the course of this conversation. Yeah,
I love to read. I'm a super slow reader. Like on the SAT, ACT thing, I got like a 950 in math and then like a 350 in English. Like I read like a third grader. Like I'm really bad at reading, but I like to read. I like to listen, especially when I'm working out. So one of my favorite recent books, big paradigm shift, is a book called Who Not How by Dan Sullivan. And I can't remember the co-author, but I've been a big follower of Dan's for a long time. And I've definitely subscribed to the solution to every problem is not in the fix, it's in the people, right? So Who Not How, that book reinforced for me that if I want to continue to scale my apartments, I want to grow, want to buy more deals, evaluate more deals, it's about who, the person that we could bring in to solve the problem, not how I solve the problem. So I started thinking of every problem as the person was a solution, not me thinking of the solution myself. That to me was another little paradigm shift that added to what I already subscribed to, but took it to another level that thought, hey, it's okay for me to have problems. It's okay to think them through, but bring in somebody else that's the expert, whether it's property management, CapEx, raising money, underwriting deal, whatever that is, bring in a person, a permanent solution by bringing a great person to solve the problem.
That's Yeah, I mean, we've had this book brought up before in the podcast, and I think it's so telling to when you have someone who is on that level that they can see that and they can now implement that and see how to solve those problems and find the solutions to the problems through the people that can solve them themselves. I think that's it's a key.
And real application of that, Yona, right now is we're actively searching for an analyst and an underwriter. Mm-hmm. Just going to look at OMs and T12s and T3s and review that and rent projections and growth numbers, job migration, population growth, that kind of stuff. So we can evaluate more OMs and make more offers. We make a lot already, but we want to make more. We want to expand to a couple other markets. I can't do all that by myself.
Of course not.
I got to bring somebody in that can help me.
Awesome. So anyone listening to this, if you're interested, this is going to air pretty soon. Reach out to Josh if that's something that's interesting to you, because that's an awesome opportunity. I mean, a great opportunity. Third question, which is going to be, what's a skill or talent that you would like to learn?
This is going to sound weird, but construction, right? I know nothing about construction. We have a huge portfolio, and I'm an idiot when it comes to like plumbing, electrical. Like I was so hard rely on other people to help me make those decisions. We have a VP of construction, full-time guy, W-2, makes well into six figures, does really well for us. I rely on him a lot. His name's Dave. But I've just and how are you in real estate for 20 years, Josh? And you know freaking nothing about construction. You're such an idiot. Not that I want to know it all, but just to intelligently talk about it. When people talk about P-traps, right?
I don't know what that is.
What is that? I don't know what that is. Yeah. Diverters.
Yeah.
What?
No.
So like that for sure. The other, if there was one other one, I think people who are comedians, I wish I was funny. Like Sebastian Maniscalco is that dude is so funny. I've seen him 4 times live. If I could be a comedian, and be a good one that, so many people are attracted to comedy and self-deprecating humor. People generally are so attracted to that. It would just be, you'd be such a better even entrepreneur and a leader if you could be funny, because people are attracted to humor. So that would be another skill for sure.
Oh, there you go. I mean, listen, this has been pretty entertaining up until this point. You're doing pretty well. Yeah.
I don't have any jokes though. I just got a ton of energy, Yona, and I smile a lot. Right. My dentist just fixed my teeth. I had this one tooth that was what do they call that? Inverted, where it was, and I had this weird tooth forever. Finally got it fixed. I'm really proud of my smile now. So I smile a lot. So smiling and energy but I'm not funny. I wish I was funny.
All right. Okay. I mean, listen, you got to have some jokes to
right.
go in the mix there. So fourth and final question is going to be, what does success mean to you?
Oh, no question that success to me doesn't mean anything about money, but about balance. Balance is the word for me. And I've done a pretty good job of it. I'm pretty happy with it. Balance, because it's sad that I've coached these young kids. My daughter, Juliana's 13. She's going to be in high school next year. So many parents have come up to me and said, Josh, you're a great coach. You've spent so much time with these kids, and a lot of people in my community know what we do and we're pretty successful. And they're like, how do you do it? Because balance has been so important. And again, it goes back to my experience with cancer, right? Realizing that there's no guarantee of another day. There's no guarantee of another year. I'm going to do this over the next 10 years. Well, what if the shit hits the fan tomorrow, like it did for me? And so having a big impact on a lot of people by making a lot of other people priority and constantly be communicating with my mother, my brothers, I fight with them all the time. We have a weird relationship, but I make it an effort to talk to them often, even though we have a strained relationship. But balance, because success, friends that just have huge mortgage companies and buy Ferraris and Lamborghinis and have $10 million yachts, but they hardly make it to their kids' lacrosse games. And they're jerks, right? And nobody likes them, even though everybody wants to be around them because they're so loaded. Mm-hmm. What kind of life is that, right? What kind of life is it? If you have a ton of family time but no money, that sucks. Got a lot of money but no family friend time. Maybe you have family and friend time and money but no faith, right? It's all this balance, right?
Right.
To me, that's success, is when it all is working together. Never going to be perfect. Maybe at one point, one's levering up really well and you're suffering in another area. but just trying to constantly pull those levers so they feel like they're in some sort of equilibrium. That to me is success, man.
Yeah. And I think the first thing is just to have the priorities straight in the first place, because if you don't have your priorities straight, you won't have anything to balance, right? I mean, that's when you talk about those people that have all this money and they're jerks and they, don't spend time with their kids and stuff like that. Like, they don't have their priorities straight whatsoever. Like, they're not going to balance anything because they don't want to, or they don't have any, belief that they should be, or they have any obligation to do so. So I think getting your priorities straight is, obviously you have done so, and many others have, but I love that analogy and really that kind of framework of balance, because that makes all the difference.
And I'll tell you, like 10 years ago when I was sick, like before that, I definitely didn't have balance. Like, I was working till 7:00 at night. We had little kids at home. I was just trying to build a business. I thought the way for me to love my wife was just through success and money. That wasn't right. And I still screw up my relationship with my wife all the time. We have a great relationship, but like I'm human, right? I mess it up all the time. So, but man, I definitely feel like I'm in a better place today than ever. And again, my father just passed so many of these amazing lessons. He's recently passed away back in November, about a year ago. And I just can't even believe it's been a year. And so part of it is just constantly thinking about him and all the lessons he gave to me, trying to pass those back to my own kids and kids that I even mentor through sports. Which is one of the greatest gifts ever, is doing that. And I think, again, if you're a parent listening to me and Yona right now, and you're not coaching, you're missing out, right? Because whether it's music, whether it's helping at the school at recess, coaching kids or your grandkids, whatever that is, the funny stuff, the funny, crazy stuff that kids say happens at practice. It happens at recess. It happens at the schools. They don't tell you the funny stuff when they come home from school. You got to go to the school and to the practice hear the funny, weird stuff that they talk about. It's so entertaining for me. I love it. So I just encourage everybody, look, if you don't know anything about soccer and your kid's 7 years old, just go coach it for the entertainment value and just do it with passion and joy and happiness. And the kids will love you for it. Don't sit on the sidelines, get involved, man. That's part of the life balance. And I think I've started to get it right in the last 5 or 10 years. Awesome.
I love that. That's so amazing. Where can our listeners find you or reach out to you, Josh, if they want to?
Yeah, Yona, appreciate that. We are actually looking for this kind of underwriter analyst, so definitely reach out to us. But our main website, freelandventures.com, freelandventures.com/passive / blah, blah, blah. There's all these slashes of all of our different pages, but freelandventures.com, our main site. You can get a hold of us there, see our portfolio, case studies, all that different kind of stuff. So yeah, definitely reach out.
Awesome. Well, we'll make sure to put that in the show notes. And I appreciate you taking the time. This has definitely been a lively, entertaining, and wonderful conversation. So I appreciate you taking the time out.
Yeah, Yona, so blessed and so grateful that you invited me to be on, man. Thanks for having me.
A pleasure. And to our listeners, remember, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn. Send me a DM, a connection request, Yona Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.